You're listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Welcome back to another episode of 40 Thrive. Before we even dive in today, please be sure to hit that follow or favorite button wherever you're listening to 40 Thrive. It is the best way to get alerts when a new episode is published. You never have to search for the podcast again. And if you're a return listener and an Apple user, please consider sharing an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We're all about sharing the show and helping as many women as humanly possible thrive over 40. Thank you so much. On today's episode, you'll meet Nikita Thigpen. Nikita helps exhausted power couples and married women entrepreneurs reconnect. I'm telling you right now, if you are someone who has your own business or you're in a relation, you don't even have to have a business. Let's be honest. If you're in a relationship and you have been together for more than this last year, this crazy, crazy year, you'll definitely benefit from Nikita's insight. We talk about building a business together as a couple. We talk about sharing space when that was not the plan. And we just talk about how exhausting things can be right now and how often a marriage or a long-term partnership is the first to take the hit. Nikita has become known as the #1 balance and relationship advisor in the world. She's an international best-selling author of the book Selfish. She's a keynote speaker, podcast host, CEO, and she is dialed in to what we need right now. You can get Nikita's book, Selfish, and all of the books from 99 40 Thrive episodes. I made you a little Amazon store. If a 40 Thrive guest has a book, you'll find it there, all in one place. So head to the show notes at 40thrive.com/episode 99. If there was a guest, you loved her, or you are now binge listening to all the episodes, every book from every guest who has one can be found right there, 40thrive.com/episode 99. And next week, it is episode 100. I cannot wait. I have a special guest co-host you may recognize. We're celebrating 100 episodes packed with experts, resources, kick-ass women with incredible stories, 100 episodes created just for you. So don't miss that next week. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. Here's my chat with the brilliant Nikita Thigpen. Nikita, welcome to 40 Thrive.
Thank you for having me. I am honored and excited to be here.
So one of the things that you are skilled at is knowing how couples who are now sharing a workspace can survive it.
Yes.
We're going to get to that. But first, I was reading your bio and I read a little bit of it again in the intro. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is you work with women, entrepreneurs specifically, but women who are married.
Yes.
Married entrepreneurs. Why that niche? Like, why is that so specific?
Because I want to save you. No.
Yay, that's the answer I was looking for. Thank you.
Right? Let's free all the married women. No, I get it. I relate on so many levels. My husband and I have been together since 13, together since 17, married since 22.
Wow.
So without dating myself, we're leading into 30 years. And with kids and now grandkids and all the things, well, you know how I feel about saving the world, right? And building stronger families.
Yes.
And it starts with us. You know, women are the foundation. Our husbands, our spouses, our forever loves, you know, regardless of sex, may be the rocks of the family, so to speak, depending on what your dynamics are. But we are the foundation. And if you're two women in a relationship, there's like double the foundation, which means double the trouble when it comes to foundations that might have cracks in them. So there's lots of greatness because of it, but there's also extra things that we have to be considerate of. Right. So for me personally, being a married woman entrepreneur who grew up with her forever love, there was lots of things that we had to navigate through, including understanding that we were still individual humans entitled to our own individual happiness and fulfillment as we created better together. And then you add in the fact that I'm a licensed clinical social worker, a trauma specialist, sexologist, relationship therapist, breakthrough coach, all those things. It really led me to just wanting to understanding how could I truly build families from a space of not just being, the American dream, picket fence, 2.5 kids and a cat or a dog. That's one thing. the more important thing was being able to create people who really enjoyed their lives, who enjoyed the process, who created other generations of not just doers, but kids who could become who they wanted to, and not just to live in the shadows of mediocrity that maybe their families, their parents had to survive through so they could have a chance to have opportunities, right?
Right.
I wanted to give people what I didn't have, quite honestly. I wanted to make sure that there was a better world for my kids and my grandkids and all those that I will be privileged to see in a way that I didn't have, because it was torturous and dysfunctional and traumatic in all the ways. And I don't want other people to have to do that, because that's just what we do.
Right.
So that's why Married Women Entrepreneurs.
Some of the most successful businesses right now that are being started are women over 50 specifically. But married women have different challenges. This is not to say, if you're listening right now, you're not married, you're not partnered, you're a single person who is an entrepreneur. Awesome. And you have your challenges that are unique to you that maybe some of us wouldn't understand.
Absolutely.
But married women have their own unique challenges. And so it sounds like you're coming from a holistic approach
Yes.
to entrepreneurship and not just the work itself.
Yeah, we're glorified. We're at a girl, at a guide, depending on how you identify, when you are a hard worker, when you are overstretched and overwhelmed. It's like, oh, that's so dope. You're a badass. You did all that stuff. Meanwhile, you're suffering and suffocating on the inside, and you're not at a girl, at a guide, when you just want to pause and take a break and wiggle your toes and watch Netflix or whatever it is that you decide to do with your few moments to breathe. You're not celebrated for that. It's understood on some levels. People are like, oh, I get it. She just needed a moment. And it's almost like this passive aggressive kind of pitying, like, oh, you needed a moment, sister. Like, I get you, girl. Like, no, how about we celebrate the pause? Like, how about we celebrate the wanting to love ourselves and have time to heal and forgive toxic patterns and people that we had allowed at some point in our lives and our friendships and our ex-lovers, like all the things, and not it be the thing that you get to do because you were so burnt out that it had to be done.
Right.
So people are like, okay, I understand.
Isn't it so interesting?
It is. And it's sad.
We have to earn the pause. We have to earn it.
Exactly.
I have to have checked off X amount of things on my list for me, maybe at 4:00 to stop and watch Netflix.
Exactly. Or otherwise, like, you're not beasting enough. You're not ambitious enough, right? Like, we do that. And many of us don't necessarily say it out loud about our sister friends or our cousins or whoever, but there is this part of you that's like, oh, well, you have the privilege of stopping at 4:00. I don't, right?
Yes.
And it's almost like I don't, because I'm doing more than you, right? Like, there's this kind of internalizing when that may be the reality. Maybe you are doing more than Nikita because you've chosen to be busy. Nikita's chosen to be productive. And being able to separate that is really important. So part of my job is to help women specifically to be more selfish, like to be intentional about taking that time to fill up and choose what is priority to be productive in connecting with your family, your lover, yourself, whatever is going on in your key relationships, and not do all the busy stuff that doesn't matter when the chips are falling, when the pandemic is blowing up. It doesn't matter.
Right. And speaking of selfish, you wrote the book on it, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, but how do you differentiate when you work with women, busy versus productive? Like, how does one shift from that place of constantly being busy to being productive?
Yeah, it's morbid. But one of the things that I ask women when they're like in their head, because we have this analysis paralysis, we get in that ruminating loop of all the things that have to be done. So one of the ways to kind of put the switch is, would any of those things matter if this was your last day? And it's literally like calls for pause, like it's a breath. And most women will back up if this was my last day. Like, yeah, what out of all the things that are paralyzing you right now with all the stuff that's in your head and you got to do this and this 25 hats that you're wearing, which ones of them matter if it's your last day? And then that's when we can really like start to pull apart. Now, obviously, we're not just going to throw all the 23 other hats
I got to tell you, I'm not working on my last day. So
right. Exactly.
I love my work, but I'm not doing it.
Exactly.
Calling in sick.
Right. It's a health maintenance day. But it does let you back up a little bit from the anxiety that's created. My addiction was stress. And I talk about it in the book, and we'll talk about that later, but we're used to the rush of being in that burn zone.
Yes.
Two ends of a candle, right? To the point of literally fizzling all the way out and then crashing and then doing it all over again. What's the definition of insanity, right? Like same thing,
Yep.
same answer, same problem, same challenges.
Expecting it to be different.
Exactly. And we're rewarded for it. Like most of us have circles of friends and family that we communicate with that actually encourage the burn zone just in the way that they show up and share. And like, yeah, girl, I 12 hours yesterday. That was a light day, right? Like, well, I just did 16, right? And it's almost like this competitive edge, which is perfect when you're in project mode, when you're in the middle of an audit, depending on your business model. If there's something major going on with your family, like you're dealing with grief and running a business simultaneously and managing healthcare issues and all that, that burn zone had to happen. So you need those people that are championing you to like, you got this. You can do it, but that's not all the time. That shouldn't be your only conversations. The only people in your life are like, how much are you doing today and how can you do more? That's not okay.
Right. And, I've seen it myself where being busy is a badge of honor, or I had a job back like 20 years ago where I was working on a really tough project and my office mate was working on another show that wasn't as grinding. And at 6 o'clock, I'd be like, oh, half day. And it was like this badge of honor, right? That like, oh, I'm going to be here till midnight. We are past that, I think, as women at this age. I don't have to impress anyone. I want to do the least amount of work to get the most impact. I'm not really 100% there yet on how to prioritize those things. Yeah. But is that something you work with?
Yeah, it's huge and it comes up all the time. So priority management is probably the third thing on the list of one of the reasons people come. Like they're mainly coming because they're just exhausted. Yeah. And it's more mental exhaustion that of course has like physical derivatives of that and spiritual and maybe even flip into their finances and then rolls into their communication, right? Like with whoever is key crucial relationships in their life. But exhaustion is probably first. Second is some version of, some people don't deem it this, but some version of imposter syndrome because they're in the middle of a transition. And the transition might just be acknowledging that they no longer want to do things the way that they were doing them.
Right.
That might be the transition. It may not be a new business or, new relationship. Transition of becoming is really challenging when your identity has been like, that's Jackie the Beast. Like, do you know what? Like, that woman works circles around her. And
I'm going to record that and just play it back to myself every morning, right?
Jackie the Beast, right? Right. But, you get that and you fuel off of that, even when you're really at your bottom. So when you're transitioning to acknowledge that you do really, truly want to do something different and become another version of this, you almost feel like you have to let that identity go. And it's not that. It's not an or, it's an and. It's like Jackie is a beast always, and she's becoming more aware of how she can beast out smarter, how she can enjoy the beasting, all the fruits of her labor. She can actually participate in them versus seeing the numbers rise in her portfolio and her bank accounts, and maybe her team numbers are growing. Meanwhile, you're like, that vacation home that I worked really hard to buy is looking further and further away. Because even at the thought of planning the vacation is probably the only break I'm going to have. Because once I get there, I'm going to have to work 20 hours and I'm on the beach and I need to bring my laptop and I'm in the bed and I'm trying to make love. And I'm like, yeah, we got 15 minutes, dude, because I need to get back to.
Well, that's generous.
Right. Look, right. I'm trying to be kind. But you know what I mean? So yeah, priority management is usually like the third one on the list.
Yeah. And so what's first in the list? I have to know.
The first is the exhaustion. That's usually why people are coming. They want some way to zip up the holes that are draining from them, wherever those leaks are, to contain their energy management capacity in a space where they can really feel full again for themselves and feel quenched. And then they can like get back to pouring out and doing all the selfless things that being selfish has now allowed them to do. Okay. And the second is really that imposter syndrome transition that we were talking about. Yes. And some women don't like that term because it's like, I had that, I dealt with that. And you're at a new level of your life now, right?
Right.
New level, new challenge, new issues with accepting that. Yeah. New imposter syndrome.
I think there are a lot of things like that. Imposter syndrome is a great example of, we may tackle it in one way. And like you said, we move into another area of our lives and we walk in like, I've got this. And then suddenly we don't understand why we don't have this.
Right. Exactly. It's constant reversing the imposter syndrome. The first step of reversing imposter syndrome is acknowledging that it's even happening. A lot of the women that we work with are powerful women. They're Jackies of the world, right? Like they're established, they have careers, they can work circle around the skill in that area. So part of the challenge is like, how do you take a powerful woman and say like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. I see what's happening here. Cause you're like, I don't have that label. Like I dealt with that in my 20s. I dealt with that in my 30s. Like, I'm not dealing with that now. And it's like, yes, mama, you are. And it's part of the growth pain, which is why we have to acknowledge it's happening so we can now do the healing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, that's an infection that you're choosing to ignore because you feel like you're impervious to infection anymore because you've already dealt with them in your younger years.
Right.
And that's not reality.
Yeah. We've had to become so guarded to get to where we are, right? Because you can't let them see you sweat if you're going to get to where you are as a powerful woman. And so it's hard to then get to where you are and then go, oh, I can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I jokingly said to my husband yesterday when I got off a client call, I said, I feel this little twinge of victory every time I get off a call that they weren't the one to find out I'm full of shit. You know, like I'm half joking, but don't we all have that where I know that what I'm teaching and what I'm coaching, I know what I'm doing. I'm pretty confident about that. Yet at the same time, I get off the call and I'm like, whew, I didn't sound like an idiot.
Right. That's a really good example. So using your metaphor of sweating, we know athletes sweat a lot, right? Like when they're running, racing, jumping, hiking, whatever it is that they're doing. And no one questions the sweat. The sweat is expected. The fact that when they finally finish the race, they're like, and they're breathing all hard and they look kind of grimy and their faces don't look pretty. The mascara is gone, whatever was going on with them, it is not cute.
Right.
But everyone celebrates it because they did the damn thing.
Yeah.
They got to the other side of the race. We don't think it applies to us, and it does. You can do the damn thing and be sweating and show the vulnerability, which is a strength, right? Like showing this is hard. There was a challenge. I needed to give myself permission to pause so I could fill up and go back out there and be smart and do it again and celebrate yourself in that way. Everyone else is trying to catch up and everyone else is like, oh, she's a jock, she's a nerd, she's all those things. That's okay because they'll be regretting they didn't have that athletic body 10 years later, right? Because you were doing the work. You were looking vulnerable and grimy and sweaty and breathing all heavy to get to the other side. You did it. And now they're coming to you for help with other things. So I think the metaphor that you were using with that, with the other side, the service part of the call, it's like I did just answer that question or solve that problem really easy. So for someone who doesn't know any better, they'd be like, oh, she's so full of shit. She answered it so easy, but they don't know how many years of experience did that take?
Yes, exactly.
How many races and practices and late nights and tears
and failures, mistakes
and failures, right? The tripping, the falling that happens. That's why that call in 20 minutes, you answered someone's question, you solved something for them, you worked them through something that was troubling them for months and years in 15 or 20 minutes because of the work you put in.
Yes.
So being able to show up fully that way and it be so easy is something you earned.
Yeah.
Right? Like you earned it. And now you get to look pretty doing it. You get to be Serena Williams like what? Yes. Right?
With the one leg tights and the shorts. I'm on it. That's going to be my new look.
Exactly. I'll share it with you.
Amazing. So let's talk about being selfish. We've sort of touched upon that, but you wrote the book on it, literally. So your book is called Selfish: Permission to Pause, Live, Love, and Laugh Your Way to Joy.
Yes.
Tell me about joy.
Yeah. So the book is not a business book for anyone listening. It's a survivor memoir and a personal transformation story that I truly hope just heals and helps someone find their own victory, truly.
Yeah.
So don't expect like here's step 1, step 2, step 3 if you decide to read it.
Not only if you decide to read it, I'm going to link to it in the show notes so they will read it.
Yeah.
It's on Kindle. You can buy the paper. There's no audiobook, right?
No, not yet. I haven't gone through all the tech gremlin issues that is Audible. Like that's a whole nother. I know that's your past life world too, but oh my God, a whole nother beast in that regard.
Right.
So it is 400,000 locations worldwide. So feel free to pull it up anywhere.
Wow.
Which I'm very, very grateful for.
Yeah.
So joy for me in the writing of Selfish, which is really my story. I bled on those pages, 209 pages of truth and vulnerability and nakedness emotionally, and in some pages physically. So I share all the things specifically to let other women know you are not alone. I wanted to normalize the growth process of being able to go through the ultimate traumas and dysfunction and challenges. And the affirmations that I woke up to was, you're stupid. You're going to be just like your mother who was pregnant at 17 and all the things like that. That was not a way to fill up. And I was still able to not only survive it, but thrive in spite of it and forgive the people who were human and sick and be able to forgive them without holding on to it. And it was not a, hey, I'm going to forgive everyone today type of choice. It was a process. It was lots of therapy, lots of money spent investing in me, right? Like coaching, advising, all the things. And more importantly, doing the work and acknowledging that if I didn't do it, I was going to impact my kids. I was going to hurt my family, the dynamic that I worked so hard to not be a replica of how I grew up in any way, shape, or form. So my reason for being selfish was to save my life first so that I could then be here to give more to other people in my life that matter to me, and then kind of ripple it to other people that I'll never have an opportunity to meet. So joy is really about your balance and your healthy relationships and your intimacy with yourself before anyone else. So creating the joy for me was really kind of that formula of what matters to me. Like balance for me is just the truth of what you want over the boundaries you create to achieve it. And I had to admit, like, what do you want? You know, when I went to school for my first degree for undergraduate, I was pre-med and triple majored in psychology, sociology, and anthropology.
What?
Yeah, I know. I'm a special breed of special. I told you my addiction was stress, right? So there was that.
Yes.
It was a high. And my goal was I was going to be a pediatrician who had a psychology practice on the side of her house. Like that was my 5-year-old self telling myself at, 17, 18, 19, 20, all through early undergraduate years that this is what you're going to do, even though I wasn't really connected to that anymore, right? Like that past expectation, even of yourself, that you told yourself, this is what I'm going to do, so I'm going to do it.
Yes.
And then I hit calculus and organic chemistry and was like, hell no, I don't like this. That's it for pre-med.
Yep, done.
Done with that. And of course, there was part of me that questioned, the psychology, the sociology, the anthropology, like, well, are you just doing this to still be on that road to being a psychologist, or is this what you really want? And I had to really look at the truth of acknowledging not only my skills, but what I was in tune to. Like I discovered over time, it wasn't right away, but I discovered one of my biggest talents was being a designer. Like I could design solutions to almost any problem in a very short amount of time.
Wow.
Not mathematical. Don't ask me any of those. We talked about that earlier because I did just study for the test. But that was a talent that I had that I didn't celebrate. It was just like, oh, you have quick answers. And to your point earlier, it can feel like that was so fast. That probably sounds like, nothing. Like someone else is just going to read right through that. But like, that's not a real solution.
Right.
Even though it really is. And it really did work. I wasn't acknowledging for myself what I was able to accomplish, because that's what we do. We do something great and we don't celebrate it. Someone else says, oh, Jackie, you are amazing. And you're like, thanks, girl. And then you keep going. You don't actually pull it into your body and tell the neurotransmitters in your mind, this is something we want more of. Let's do more of this. Like, let's take stock and fire these wires together because we can create more of this. Instead, we're just so used to more problems, because you're already thinking, yep, I got the undergraduate. Yeah, but I got to get in the master's program. Got it. Yeah, but like you're already thinking about the next leg.
It's never enough.
It's never enough. Exactly. And so for me, the process of the book was really being honest with myself. Like, no wonder your husband came to you that night when you decided to take a sabbatical in your early years and said, nothing I do for you is good enough. And you didn't understand where that was coming from. You were like, something's wrong with him. And he's like, no, ho, something's wrong with you. Like, he didn't say that, but you know what I mean? Like, he was like, you're not getting
There would
it.
be something wrong with him if he said that.
Right? Yeah, truly. We would not have made it through that sabbatical. I can say that much. Heifer I can deal with. Ho, not so much.
So that's such a great point right there. It's like sometimes someone will point something out and it's like, oh, what got up their butt? But in actuality, like, take stock of that. Take notice.
Yeah. He was mirroring what I was projecting, except for I wasn't aware that I was projecting anything but amazingness, right? Like, I thought in all of my mess, which we're all messy in our own ways, but in all of my super, super mess before the work, before the therapy, before the reality, like, You can't be a multi-survivor of multiple different complex traumas and not have something going on with you.
Yeah.
But in your mind, because you're not screaming in the middle of the night, or you're not looking like someone who's always fragile and triggered, that you just got it together. Because you're a helper and because you help other people, that you're okay. When the reality was I wasn't. And the people who were the closest to me were getting the most toxic spillage out of me. And I couldn't see it until we hit ahead. And I think my daughter, who's now 20, was like a year and a half old. And I was in the middle of a master's program, because why not? Like, why wouldn't I do that? It was on my birthday. So why not? Like, why not do this on your birthday and be extra dramatic with it?
Did you find that was really your identity, right? Was being badass. I just talked to a coach the other day about this, and I was talking about pushing through, right? We push through. Those of us who have been through trauma, we've been through experiences. At this age and stage, most of us have been through something that you could categorize as traumatic.
Absolutely.
And many of us find our own identity in pushing through and being badass and being able to accomplish it all, but it's not sustainable.
It isn't. And there's another side to it too. So like for me, most of my friends, and this is for anyone who has this ethnicity, hear my heart and understand the lightness behind it. Growing up, I am African-American. So people would be like, oh, you must be Jamaican because you've always had 3 to 5 jobs, right? Like, so people would say that all the time to me. And, you know, at first you just kind of like, whatever. And then it almost becomes that badge. Like, well, yeah, it's Nikita. You're always in school. You're always on some kind of clinical residency, something, and you have 3 to 5 jobs and a baby that's breastfeeding and a husband at home, right? Like you've always had that. So who are you without it?
Yeah.
So when you do on the other side, when you do for whatever your reasons are, whether it's by choice or because you're taking care of elderly family, whatever the reasons are, you are now forced to reckon with you will not cannot, because we know you can because you've done it. Right? Yeah. We already know that you are a beast and you can do that. But do you need to be that aggressive, and regardless of your age or stage? Just because you're over 40 and phenomenal doesn't mean that you have to act like you're in your 20s just because you know that you could run circles around those 20-year-olds. Right. But then when we like scale down, like when I became an entrepreneur 10 years ago, that was my 5 jobs in one.
Yes.
Right. Like that was, but that even though we know that logically, it didn't feel that way. It felt like I was being lazy.
Yeah.
It was like, what is happening? You have one job.
Right.
And when I would meet people who knew the other side of me, that past side of me, they'd be like, oh yeah, so what you got going on? I'm like, oh, I'm running Big Pro. And they're like, yeah, but yeah, like what else? And I'm like,
that's not enough.
Right. And so then family and friends would start to, especially when you're an entrepreneur, which is the other reason we dive deeper, they look at you like, oh, so you can just do whatever you want. So I can call you in the middle of the afternoon and hold you for an hour. Because I mean, why not? I'm on lunch break and I need someone to talk to.
Right.
You can stop whatever you're doing because it's clearly not as important as what I'm doing. Right.
Of course.
And then like all of those layers kind of come up. And that's another mental burden that happens for women entrepreneurs, especially if you're married. Don't add in kids to it, because even your spouse, depending on what he or she does for a living, it then turns into like, oh, the kids have something going on at school. You pick them up. You do it. You go to PTA. You do report card signing. Like, well, I have clients. I'm trying to get clients, right? Like all the layers, and you're not accepted as valuable in the same way until your business is multimillionaire, you know, until you're doing like a version of Bill Gates, you know, on some level. Then people are like, oh, I should respect you. But you have to build to that. And it's really hard to deal with all those mental challenges along the way.
Right. Well, let's dive into that a little bit, because the mental lifting, I forget there's another term for it, that some women specifically, of course, there are men who are in this role as well. But for the most part, when I talk to other women, they're doing all the mental work, right? So the doctor appointments, the teacher follow-ups, thinking about meals, what's on the grocery list. I'll throw out mine, like taxes, prepping for the taxes, not doing them. I'm not crazy. But all of it, all of the mental heavy lifting can sometimes fall on the shoulders of one person. You know, many of us have partners who are willing and able to do absolutely anything to quote unquote help.
Yeah.
If you stop down and figure out which to delegate and assign, You're making that face that you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Listen, I have lived and breathed this. Yes.
So how do you work with those clients who not only are a partner, possibly a parent, but more so doing most of the heavy lifting when it comes to the mental and emotional things of the family?
Yeah, that one's tough because that's most of our clients, actually.
Yeah.
Even if the husbands are phenomenal. I don't know if you've been reading Twitter. There's this whole New York Times article that went out. So there's a hashtag called Not All Husbands. It's blowing up everywhere. So the article basically in its own way, and I scanned it, I have to actually read it, but it's basically saying like husbands are not valuable anymore. Like no one needs them, which in and of itself, I do not agree with holistically, right? And so the pushback, clapback, whatever you call it, Black Twitter is a roar with, hashtag not all husbands, because people are saying like, no, my husband does contribute. He cleans, he cooks, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, right?
Yes.
He cleans, he cooks, he does all these things. So this article doesn't apply to my partner, but they are saying like, oh, but they were right about those socks though. Like there's, some actual truths in there, like, not putting the socks together or whatever.
Right.
So there's like a little bit of lighthearted take on it, but people are really kind of furious at the same time. And so that happens in the real life dynamic of the women are like, I love my husband or my partner. Like we handle business together. Like we take care of the business of the house, the kids, the dogs, whatever. We do all the things. And that sucker gets on my nerve because he doesn't, right? Because it's an and, that space of and, A-N-D, that we all have to acknowledge at some point. Like you can love them and not feel appreciated at the same time.
Yes.
You can love them and not feel desired anymore. And so a lot of the women, because of the exhaustion, that number one on the list that they're coming for, they're feeling all kinds of ways about the conflict of, we are so good together. I'm not thinking about divorce. Those are not my people. The people who are like right at the brink of divorce, I will refer them out. Yeah. But the people who are happy, but want to be happier because they're acknowledging that they're in this transition and they just need help, securing a healthy mindset about embracing who they're becoming and not feeling guilty about perhaps leaving their partner behind because they're in a different stage of their own growth at the same time. You're not necessarily higher than them. They're just in a different space, which is part of the clarifying that we have to do. If wives come and say, fix him, I'm like, no, that's not what we're going to do.
If you can't do it, I can't do it.
right, exactly. But, a lot of what I have to do is just create a sacred space. That is my first job. Create the sacred space, knowing that it's completely confidential. 98% of my clients will never even be acknowledged in the world. We sign anonymity clauses, NDAs, we do all the things. We give them the option to do it. We're very clear because we want them to know, no shade to Iyanla Vanzant. I think she is great. She is good at what she does, but I'm not going to have clients on a show opening up the deepest, darkest parts of themselves, even for education purposes, which I understand is her point. Like, let me educate you about what's going on behind the scenes. I want to give you a sacred space that you don't have to worry. I'm never going to put you in a position to take a selfie with you for social proof, right? If you want to share, like I have a client that's like, Nikita is the greatest relationship advisor in the world. I'm like, hell yeah, I am. Hallelujah. But I would never share that.
Right.
I would never say like, this person is my client or that person.
What a concept.
Right. Like privacy. Hello. Like in a world of no privacy. Honestly, Jackie, it's one of our, it's not secret, but it's one of our special pieces of our sauce. It's because we give that sacred space.
Yep.
And building that trust for them allows them like vent. You feel like you're complaining too much because you're not allowing yourself to complain. Let's have that moment. You spill out, vomit out, whatever is in there, empty that gut. And once we do that, then we can look and be like, okay, I see that you actually didn't digest those vegetables. So let's talk about that, right? And like, let's see what was good in that you vomited out with the bad stuff because you just wanted everything out in the process.
Right.
So my first job for all of them is to give them the sacred space. And then we kind of build from there. We do a lot of inner child healing, not just the women, the men too. But for a lot of them, there's stuff that's there that's telling them how to show up as, a desirable person, as an adult, as a sexual being, as an empty nester. Hello. Like that's on the other side. Or having teenagers and now feeling like, whoa, now they know what we're doing in here when we close the door. It's not the same when they were toddlers and we could put them for a nap. So now there's a fear around even having physical intimacy before you're an empty nester, because you have teens who are aware, like the layers.
This could not be more timely, and I'll probably regret talking about this. But last weekend, my youngest came to the bedroom door at an inopportune time and knocked on the door. And I said, I'll be out in a minute. And so he thought, all right, she'll be out in a minute. So I'll just sit here at the door. So let's just say, flash forward a few hours later, and he and another one of my sons are talking about how traumatized they are and that they can't talk about it. And I'm like, just tell us. And so then they did. And we had to have this whole conversation. I felt pretty good that, you know, I made it 14 years, actually more than that. He's the youngest at 14, but you're absolutely right. I mean, especially in this time, right?
Yes.
Before the kids would leave school, before we would start work, you know?
And you had a window.
Even if it's a small window, you know?
Exactly. Listen, let me congratulate you that you said in a few hours went by. Hello.
Oh, no, they didn't address it for a few hours.
Yes, be modest, Jackie. Be modest. I'll rock with your modesty.
Let's just say I was out a few minutes later, so he didn't say anything for a while. I think he was traumatized, but you know, it was a great opportunity to talk about sex because, as you know, there's no one talk; it's an ongoing thing.
Yes, multiple conversations.
That was interesting, Nikita.
And for some parents or some family members, it's halting. It halts even the fun, non-penetrating related sex. That's just like flirting. It halts it because it's like, well, I don't want to flirt. And then you think we're going to do something because I'm not going to do it because the kids are here. Right. Like, so it like gives this whole kind of catastrophizing that people do. And it creates anxiety about just the possibility. So then they'll pull all the way apart.
Yes.
They stop putting on the nicer, more, you know, enduring lingerie or, you know, the t-shirt with the little booty shorts for the night. They even stopped doing that, and everything's like big, bulky, oversized, not appealing.
Right.
And I'm picking on something physical like clothes, but you can apply that to everything. They used to sit next to each other on the couch. Now they're a cushion away. Now one person is at the table still working because we get to hide in our work. And the other person is like, I'm trying not to be irritated, but if I approach her or I approach him and I get rejected, we're going to have another problem. So then everyone just like dims their libido.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
I guess this is the episode where I'm going to vomit all my vegetables.
Sacred space.
Sacred space. No one's listening. That's one of the things I've said during this whole time where we're living together 24/7 is on those times that you can't go and sneak away. That's when I like the flirting. Yeah. Because you can do it without like I'm tired or I don't feel sexy or my legs aren't shaved or whatever it is. Like you can just kind of be playful so that when you do have that opportunity, you've already greased the wheels.
Yes. And the greasing of the wheels is important because it helps with the emotional intimacy, which is the most important. Like we say intimacy 360, because it's not just the physical, right? Like there's emotional, there's financial intimacy, like all those deeper connected conversations, like all of it, it's all in there. But you're from the mindset of when we do, it's going to be amazing, but you're still allowing a when we do, right? Yeah. Even if you're like, well, it can't be every day, right? The kids are, you know, they're here, like everything's here, but you're still making room for that. For a lot of couples, especially when they have kids around your kids' ages and older that are home, and now millennials are moving back home, like, you know, there's all these other layers to that. They feel uncomfortable because there's this lack of conversation with children even growing up. Like, you know, because you said it, multiple conversations with your kids. Yeah. There are a lot of 30, 40, 50 plus year old women and men whose parents have never allowed the conversation to happen.
Oh yeah. Raising my hand, raising
it. Right. Like you don't talk about it. You don't do it. That's all you know. Yeah. And then when you get married, I expect a grandbaby, but we're not going to talk about how that happens. Right. Like they just jump all the pieces in between. Right. And so now that you're older and you have kids, for anyone else that's listening, you still have that body insecurity, that shaming around being a sexual being because it's a secret. It has to be. And secrets are not good. Privacy, totally healthy. Secrecy leads to a lot of damage, a lot of strife, right? Like when we think about how toxic secrets can be. Now, I've always ironically prided myself on being a secret keeper, but that's because I came from a very toxic situation. Right. Where secrets are like, that's how you show your loyalty. what you don't say and what you don't share. I had to grow into a healthy space of being like, I'm the privacy protector now, right? Like not the secret keeper.
Yep.
I understand the difference of it more. And I try to encourage our families, like, it is okay for you to be sexy and have shower play and fun and sneak to the basement and go into the garage, go for a drive for 15 minutes in the car. I know your mom's been watching the kids all day and it's whatever, but go get some milk. You need milk. Go in the parking lot, right? Like, and do whatever 3 minutes you can do to grease the wheels, even if it's not to go all out, because those moments, that adventure, that curiosity, it stimulates you. And it's also fueling, not just from like a neurotransmitter's perspective with building your oxytocin, which is your love hormone, your bonding hormone. It connects you deeper to your own desires. So there's like so many reasons, and it lowers your cortisol rate. It does all this scientific stuff. So it's so good for you.
Yeah. And you make such great points. And I think this is the time where we should go back to, what do we desire in life, in love, in every area?
Yes.
Because many of us are starting to get a little bit more freedom with our lives, that we can actually ask ourselves that question. So if you're listening right now, take a second, pause.
Yes.
Ask yourself, what do I desire?
And what do you really desire now?
Yes.
Versus 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 6 months ago.
Yes. I always say that, like, just because you wanted something 10 years ago or even a year ago and you no longer want that, like, you don't have to keep moving forward to that because you said you were going to. It's okay to change your mind.
Yes. Pivot into the next level of your success.
Yep.
It is so crucial. I mean, I know, Jackie, for the things that you teach women and how you help them find their voice and create it in such a magnified way, like literally magnified over the airwaves, like magnified way, that takes a lot of strength and heart, not only for you, because you have to be open to their insecurities without absorbing them.
Right.
Right.
That's the key.
Right. Like, it's super easy to hear someone say something that they're dealing with that maybe you haven't, and then it unplugs something like, am I doing that too? Right. Like, wait, well, let me, right. And we can easily be infected by it if we're not staying full enough so that nothing else can get in there that's not supposed to get in there. Which is like the point of being selfish. Be selfish enough to deal with all your stuff, to heal inner child wounds, anywhere that you're bound in your own brilliance, fill up. Because when you open yourself up to help in the way you're gifted and skilled to do, other people's stuff could easily slip in there if you got room for it to, versus you being an overflow.
Right.
And so that nothing else can get in that it's not supposed to.
I love that. And I think listening and reading other people's stories.
Yes.
So getting your book, again, link in the show notes. I think it's really important because you can learn just as much from someone else's challenges and successes. I think we're at a place where we can learn from other people's, I don't want to say mistakes, but experiences.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be one of those books that is like, first do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. It can just be, this is my experience.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you get feedback from women who are blown away by how much they learned about themselves through your book.
Yeah, it's been so humbling. The trend that I hear from all the women who have been brave enough to reach out to me, and a few brave men, I must admit, that have also read the book, have said, I wasn't ready. And I do warn people in the introduction, like, it's very raw. I'm very open. This is not I'm trying to be prim and proper for a sound bite. Yeah. This is like full-blooded honesty here. And I tried really, really hard to tell my story, not my husband's, because remember, we grew up together. So there's lots of pieces in there that I had to be very mindful to leave out, because that's his story to tell and not mine.
Perfect.
Because you know how we do as women, right? Like, we want to rescue other people into like
everybody's story is our story.
Right? Like, right. Pull it all in. And I've heard from the pattern as I wasn't ready, and I didn't realize how much we had in common, even if they didn't go through the physical things that I went through, the sex abuse, the violence, like all of it. They were like, I felt so much of that. I felt limited. I felt bound. And your story released me from so many of that. I didn't even understand that just because I said I forgave someone and I was still holding and harboring why I was still having that feeling, how I thought that I could never choose me.
Right.
And how bad I thought that was, but not choosing me damaged everyone around me that I didn't choose myself for. Right.
Yeah.
And I've been hearing that over and over and over again. And it's humbling, because when I wrote the book, quite honestly, I was just being obedient to the spirit. It was downloaded in me what the title would be. It was downloaded to me that I needed to tell. I didn't want to do it. I fought it for 8.5 years of trying to write, not write, write, not write. I can't share this. I'll never get another client, right? Like, all the things in my head, like, if you get this vulnerable, who is going to believe that you are the ambitious, amazing beast you are?
Yeah.
Because you're telling them all this stuff that you went through. And I had to release all of that, knowing that I went through this so that I could help other people avoid making mistakes, even close to what I made.
That's amazing. So like the rest of us, you're working from home. Were you working from home before this?
I was for the last 10 years. Yeah.
Okay, 10 years. And your husband is also part of your company.
Yeah, he's co-owner. He is 49% shareholder as well. He doesn't work in the business the way he used to. He works on the business. We had the fun of me firing him on his birthday a few years ago. His story is he quit. My story is I fired him and then he quit, knowing that he had to give me 30 days.
Potato, potato.
Right. I was like, and you got to give me 30 days to finish those projects. So
you're fired, but please don't leave.
Right. There are bonuses and benefits for you doing this professionally.
Excellent.
I call him the wizard behind the curtain. He literally brings magic and color to everything that we do.
Oh, I love that. So I asked in the 40 Thrive Facebook group, how many people are, if not working in the same business, sharing a space with their partner's significant other. And there are definitely quite a few who are doing that. I have to pull up some comments. But what are some of the biggest challenges? Because you are working with high profile women who are very successful. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing of them sharing a space with their partner?
Yeah. So the fun are the naked husbands, the husbands that walk behind, you're working from home now. You're used to studio work, right? Like you're used to all the fanciness of closed door, lights blinking, do not enter, that kind of life, whether literally or proverbially. But your husbands are like, well, I want coffee. I want water. I want something out of this refrigerator. I want to go reach into this closet because this room you're in, that's now your studio, used to be my overthrow room for where all my records and cigars and stuff were. So the naked husbands, as we like to say, that walk by without their t-shirt, Nikita, excuse me.
Yeah.
John, right? All of that.
While you're on a Zoom call.
Right. Trying to be, and they're glammed up and professional, at least from the waist up.
Yep.
So that's been the lighthearted, more fun parts of helping them communicate that and create some boundaries for when they're working. Outside of the kind of lighthearted, fun part of that, it really has come down to feeling overwhelmed by being around someone constantly with no break.
Yes.
So there's why intimacy. I see him all day. He's right there or she's right there all day. It's enough already, enough. There's that. So they're actually kind of pushing the idea of intimacy away because they're immediately going to the 7th grade version of themselves where you think intimacy, you think penetration. That's a small part of it, but it's the smallest part of intimacy. So helping them kind of reconnect with themselves first is really important. So when I work with power couples, I separate them. We come together for our coupling sessions, but we work individually as well, because the greatest work is really done in those individual sessions where we can not have to protect someone else's feelings, right? In the couple session, we're really get you better be careful what you tell Nikita right now, because you got to see me after we hang this up, right? There's those looks that you better watch yourself.
Right.
But individually, they're able to be really full, really open. And then eventually our couple sessions, they can be really full and really open as well, even though I'm a disruptor, but by being a third person in their marriage at that time. So a lot of it is really, they feel like they're living in the shadows of mediocrity. You're there all the time. I'm here all the time. I don't want to play games with you. I don't want to watch movies with you. We're surrounded by each other constantly. If they have kids, they'll do more of those activities, but it's not about each other. It's about the kids. It's about making sure that the kids have some sort of normalcy. If you're a couple that doesn't have kids, you don't have that buffer. Right? Yeah. It's me and you, boo, all day long. And then I'm hearing you swallow and I realize how loud it is and I don't like it. I don't know why I didn't notice this 4 years ago, but I notice it now, right? All of those things are kind of coming up. So a lot of the nuances and challenges are really being communicated because they feel safe enough and know that they're not just venting or vomiting. They're getting tools to not only clean it up in the moment, but techniques to prevent it.
Right.
So that's a lot of what's happening.
Yeah, it is a lot. And I'm relating to a lot of things that you're saying because my office became my space, right? I even worked with a feng shui expert on a previous episode. She helped me get my office together. And it was so sad because I had my husband in this. He works for Disney. He's got a substantial job. And I had him over in the corner of the office facing the wall, because I needed to have my my space. And now I don't walk into the office feeling what I used to feel.
Yeah.
You know, as far as like, oh, this is my space. I feel productive. It's beautiful. It's pretty. It's everything I want. Now I have to share it. So that's tough. And then, you know, we do spend a lot of time together. And even if I go for a run, we go for a run together. And, you know, we have dinners with the kids. And so there is a lot as far as the eating and the swallowing. I mean, I can't ask him not to swallow while he's in the office, but I can ban the food. But I have to share a couple comments with you if you're cool with that.
Yes, absolutely.
So I asked in the group, how many of you are sharing workspace with your partner? And so some are looking for partners. Some are working it out. Some of them actually run a business together, a nonprofit together. But this one, I love this one. Jane said, my husband and I shared an office, but now he's working from the basement so he can eat his chips and apples in peace. And I can slurp my coffee with abandon. And they can also take simultaneous Zoom calls.
Yes.
That's one thing. I never realized how much I talk to myself in my office. And so I'll be like, oh, why isn't this working? Like under my breath. And my husband's like, what, hun? I'm like, oh, I'm not talking to you, you know?
Right. This is an opportunity for conversation. I love that she shared it because that is a definite in the moment issue that's happening. The simultaneous calls. Like I know I'm pretty voluminous when I talk.
I love the way you put that. Voluminous.
Voluminous.
Voluminous and voluptuous.
Right, exactly. I was just about to say that. Align minds, right?
Totally.
And so like my husband's office, we live in a loft apartment. So there is no basement, right? Or no wing here. It's, you know, we're very grateful. It's very spacious, but it's still an apartment. So his office, because he's been working from home for 2 years. So even pre-COVID, full-time from home. So his office is in our bedroom, which I would never say have an office in the bedroom if it wasn't for all the things in the last, 12 months.
Yes.
But we made it really comfortable for him. And we have boundaries around when it's okay, because he is really an evening innovator who's trained himself to be an early riser for work. I don't want you click-clacking in my ear at 4 a.m. because you decided to get a jump start on your day. And it's a tech company that he works with. So there's lots of clacking, which can sound like the swallowing, right? So we had to put boundaries like, let's not do that before 7 unless there's a major project. Like, let's be mindful of the boundary. The same for me. He asked me, we have a little tea coffee station. He said, please, when I'm recording, like right now, because we're recording this. So the kitchen is underneath of me. The refrigerator, the freezer, the pans, the pots, the slamming, that can't happen, right? So I had to put some stickies on our little blackboard above the tea station that says, my family calls me Bunny. Bunny's recording at 1, Bunny's in session at 2, like, so they know, like I may have other calls happening, but the ones that matter in terms of, quality audio, lock yourselves in the room. Like you guys have bathroom access, it's fine, but lock yourselves in the room, take your water, take your tea, take your chips.
Right.
So creating those boundaries really can help make everything, wonderful. And I, like when we stop this, I'll go down and I'll check on him. He'll be in his space. I'll go and I'll give him a kiss and ask him, does he want some tea? And then I'll come right back up to work. So just creating those little moments.
Right. And that's important, right? Creating those little moments throughout the day and not being in the same space and barely acknowledging that each other is there.
Yeah. Not okay.
Yeah. So Janet was saying she's been working from home for 4 years and her husband was commuting and she would wear headphones and listen to music. And now she has to remember that she's like breaking out singing with the headphones on, in the middle of the day. It's amazing the things that, like I said, you don't really notice that you're doing when you're working together, whether you're building a business together or sharing the space. Sharing the space.
Yeah. It's all just as frustrating if we concentrate and like we filter out all the positives and concentrate on the negatives. So even like we were joking about the swallowing loud and all that stuff. I'm one of those people that swallow as loud as a cow. So when my husband like pointed it out to me, it was like, you're swallowing. And I'm like, in other circumstances, this would not be a problem. This would be something you would be enjoying. So if you want to keep enjoying it, let's not overly focus on me eating right now. Right. And so we like play with it a little bit, get a little sarcastic, but we flip it into a positive.
Yeah. Well, I love that you turn something annoying into flirting.
Yes. I'm so dirty. I'm like so dirty. I make anything dirty.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes.
My husband would appreciate that.
Right.
So you're right. And I have to say, like, I'm lucky. I mean, my husband works a full-time job for Disney and he edits my podcast right now. And he's so supportive of everything I'm doing. And it is an inconvenience for both of us to be in the same space, but this too shall pass, right?
Absolutely.
And if it doesn't, we'll come up with a much more longer term plan.
Yeah.
So,
and it definitely will work out. When I had to fire / he quit 7 years ago, when that happened, we weren't prepared to share space. We were in a smaller apartment than we are right now. And his desk was literally on the other side of me. And it was a lot. We also, similar to right now with the pandemic, we were thrust into it. The law firm he worked for had closed down. It was like lots of that. And although we had the business, we weren't quite ready to suit up and pay for all the bills. So then we were trying to integrate him more and find other ways to pare down our bills and our budgets and do all the things and still have time for each other. And I realized that because we just hadn't really had bandwidth, we had to back up because we have a fairly traditional family where my husband is, the leader of our household. I'm the neck, of course. I, make the decisions and I control lots of this stuff, but, he's empowered, right, in his way. That's always been our life. But in our company, I'm the CEO and the president.
Right.
He was doing a lot of the editing. He still helps us with our editing and designing and things, as well as a lot more work at the time. He was our COO. And so there was a lot of conversations where I had to remind him, I understand that you have a difference of opinion, but my opinion trumps this in this situation. And that was really difficult because, afterwards I'm like, what do you want for dinner, honey? And he's like, what? Right? Like, you just got on my nerve 20 minutes ago. So we had to deal with that. And we weren't quite mature about it yet. We weren't quite ready. I was still healing and I was doing my own work and not knowing that I was also kind of dominating him in certain ways because I didn't want him to dominate me because it was a trigger from past life experiences, childhood. And so until I did the work and got my own advising and coaching around it, I was like, that's why that didn't work. When he got promoted to work full-time from home, we were able to do all things beautifully. And I actually enjoy him. We want to get that office out the bedroom, right? Like we don't want that situation.
Right.
But I absolutely love it and can't see it any other way because we have such great chemistry now that we've done the work and we're able to see like, okay, you just came in, he's having a moment. Don't try to fix him. Don't try to give a solution. He just wants to be heard. Sometimes he just wants your energy. He doesn't want anything. Sometimes he wants your sex because it's medicine, right? Like, whatever works, but just kind of knowing what works for you first, but also what works for your partner is really helpful. But you can't get there if you're not doing the work.
Right. And, the thread that has gone throughout this entire conversation is being selfish.
Yeah.
Do the work, whether it's with a therapist, a coach, a group program,
yes,
any sort of advisor, a mentor. Do the work on yourself, for yourself. It's kind of amazing when you do that, how things outside of yourself sort of fall into place when you're not coming from that place of struggle within.
Yeah.
I love the work you're doing. I will link to your website and your podcast and your book, of course. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, Jackie. Your space is necessary. Your work is crucial. And I look forward to many, many other conversations.
Same here. Thank you so much, Nikita. Thank you so much for listening. We keep the conversation going in our free and private Facebook group. So make sure you join us over there. Also, if you have any questions, comments, wishes, hopes, dreams of something you'd like to hear on 40 Thrive, send us an email at hello@40thrive.com. Until next time, take care and keep thriving. Spring has sprung, and with the change of seasons, sometimes comes an increase in vitality. If you're feeling in the mood for a little more personal time, may I suggest Coconut. Coconut is all about providing clean and natural ingredients when you're enjoying your most intimate moments, with or without a partner. Naturally safe products developed by people who are obsessed with quality. Get 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/Coconut. That's 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/Coconut.